Hey everyone! First of all, I want to thank everyone for the support and comments on my previous video. Originally, I wasn't really planning on making follow-up videos. I just wanted to make a short recap of the main plot for people that don't have the time to read the full story. However, PGR has many other characters and stories that I didn't talk about, or that I mentioned only briefly. From now on, I'll try to cover as much as possible, but since there is a lot and many stories are somewhat fragmented, I decided to focus primarily on one character for each video, which usually combines multiple chapters and some side stories. This one is about Lilith's chapter, Deceiver's Rapture, but as usual when it comes to PGR stories, it will touch a lot more than just Lilith. Anyway, let's get into it. During the Golden Age, humanity's next goal was conquering space. Two major projects were working towards that goal, but they were approaching the issue from two different perspectives. Project Bakunan, led by the researcher Adriana Manzano, attempted to recreate a closed, self-contained ecosystem, able to sustain generations of humans as they travel through space. Eden 2, a generational starship that will be later known as Babylonia, was built with that concept in mind, but Manzano wanted to improve that model, building an Eden 3. Project Winter, led by Godwin, was instead attempting to develop augmented humans, allowing them to withstand long-time space travel and the environment of different planets. These experiments required many test subjects, and one branch of this project that was specifically meant to digitize people's consciousness was referred to as Project Tila. Both projects were funded and supported by Kurono, a wealthy organization with many ties to the world government. With Project Winter, Kurono took over orphanages in order to use children for their experiments. In comparison to adults, children were easier to manage, but they will also show an overall better performance for such experiments. The director of one of the orphanages was called Rosewater, and he selected many children as potential candidates for Kurono's experiments. One of these children was Eleanor, a very intelligent girl with an astounding memory that outperformed everyone else in every test. She befriends another girl named Disco, and during their stay at the orphanage, they went through brain surgeries that enhanced their performances. However, not every kid survives these procedures, and from time to time, some of them simply disappear. Eventually, the world government passes a new law that forbids experiments on humans, and since Kurono can continue these experiments openly, they repurpose many of these kids into their operatives. Manzano had a very wealthy brother. He had invested in a small town that over the years became a prosperous city known as Las Prados. After gaining access to his medical files, Kurono learned that Manzano's brother wanted to adopt a child, and they used this opportunity to make Eleanor the adopted daughter. After securing their inheritance, Eleanor kills their new parents and allows Manzano to gain access to their wealth once she becomes Eleanor's guardian. Kurono used this opportunity to provide Manzano extra funds for her research, but eventually they end up cutting ties with her and decide to redirect most of their funds toward Project Winter, deeming it a more grounded and reliable project with potential advantages that weren't necessarily related to interstellar travel, and that, in comparison, could have been a true evolutionary leap. Unable to fully continue her project, Manzano uses her inherited wealth to establish her control over their city of Las Prados, and as she grows up, Eleanor fully assumes the role of Manzano's poised and dutiful niece. Besides entertaining guests at the casino, Eleanor performs many other duties for her aunt. One of these duties was to assassinate Rosewater, the former director of the orphanage that was now working as a simple shopkeeper. Manzano wanted to eliminate any potential Kurono spy from Las Prados, where she is continuing her experiments in secret, founded by a famous writer named Professor Trout. However, this girl had been adopted by Rosewater, and after his death, Manzano brought her into their family as a maid. Knowing that she was a Kurono operative left behind to spy on her, Manzano now wanted to use Discord as a double agent to spy on Kurono instead. Despite the awkward circumstances, the two girls had been reunited, but in the end, they were still being used as tools. Years later, Manzano sends Eleanor to Fort Winter to eliminate Godwin and retrieve data about their research. Upon reaching the facility, Eleanor retrieves the data, but upon confronting Godwin, she decides to spare him. He firmly believes that his research is essential for humanity's future, and so she allows him to continue his experiments. In a way, her making this decision was also a test for Professor Trout, who was also at the facility. It was funding both Project Bakunan and Project Winter, and Eleanor herself has received a lot of useful intel from the professor in these past years, as if he had been testing her all along. It's at this point, inspired by Professor Trout's seemingly multi-layered persona, evidenced by the many pen names that he used for his books, that Eleanor decides to choose a new name for herself: Lilith, the dark moon that devours the sun during the eclipse. The ignition of the first zero-point reactor was a worldwide event. Years had led to its development, and despite being an experimental technology, an immense amount of effort and expectations had been put into it. If proven successful, zero-point energy would have changed humanity forever. It did, but in a very different way. As soon as the reactor was ignited, transmissions from the site stopped, and in the following days, months, and years, the virus that originated from the reactor spread to the rest of the planet, killing humans and infecting machines. As many rich, influential citizens evacuate to Eden 2, now renamed Babylonia, most of the population is left behind on Earth. In certain areas like Los Prados, the virus was delayed by the surrounding desert, giving its citizens more time to prepare, but the disaster was inevitable. Eden 3 had never been fully completed, but part of it had been built in an underground area nearby Los Prados. It was an almost perfect replica of Babylonia, encased in holographic screens to give the impression that it was in space, and Monzano treated many influential citizens to join her there, pretending that she was in fact evacuating them into the real Babylonia. Also, using the data previously retrieved from Fort Winter, Monzano made both herself and Lilith into constructs, knowing that they will be less vulnerable to the punishing virus. During the procedure, Lilith showed signs of infection. Professor Trout, which had now assumed the name of Vonnegut, entered in contact with her through the Ascension network and sent her precious information on how to handle the virus. After their successful procedure, Monzano uses this data to make more constructs. However, since the original data retrieved from Fort Winter is outdated, these constructs are fairly different in comparison to the ones developed by Kurono. Monzano's constructs don't have an invert device, but instead they're supplied with some sort of dialyzer that purifies the corruption as needed. It's extremely effective in areas with a lower concentration of punishing virus, allowing constructs to survive in contaminated environment for longer, but as soon as the virus reaches a certain threshold, the construct is immediately corrupted. Eventually, Lilith is sent back to Los Prados to gather more intel for Monzano and attempt to reclaim the city. She uses this opportunity to look for Discord, who had been left behind after the supposed evacuation, but that's not their only objective. Taking advantage of the unique properties of the Monzano's constructs, Lilith leads them into the more infected areas, using them like incubation chambers to attract more punishing virus, believing that the virus itself is a tool that can be mastered. By sacrificing these constructs, Lilith is able to attract the Ascendant network and establish another connection with Vonnegut. He explains that only a strong mind can survive the filtering and fully connect to the network, but in her current state, Lilith hasn't received enough exposure to the virus. During these missions in Los Prados, Lilith also discovers that one of the dying constructs had managed to transfer his mind into a nearby construct. This transmission was very similar to an experimental project called Recall, meant to upload the mind of a dying construct to a central hub, so that they will never truly die as long as they can replace their body. This construct named Lloyd had unintentionally achieved an imperfect result using the punishing virus as a medium. Back in Eden 3, Lilith uploads the combat data of the dead constructs into the lab's central hub. Lloyd's corrupted data was in it, and she affects a portion of the laboratory. She intended to attract more punishing virus in a sealed environment for her own personal goals, but despite the incident, Monzano takes advantage of the situation herself to conduct more experiments on Lloyd's memory data. During these experiments, Lloyd has successfully performed a recall hundreds of times, but Monzano never managed to replicate similar results with other test subjects. Eventually, Lloyd manages to escape from the lab by recalling his mind into another mechanoid, and much later he will be known as Lloyd the Hero, a legendary construct from Babylonia that the government used to spread fake propaganda on their recall. In the end, a corrupted Lloyd will be killed by Vera, but that's a story for another time. In the years that had followed the punishing outbreak, Discord had also become a construct, and as a Kurono operative, she had transferred to the real Babylonia and joined the Purifying Force, an elite squad that hunts down defectors. After the punishing virus reaches a suspiciously high level in the city of Los Prados, Discord and her team are sent to investigate the area. During the mission, they find a corrupted construct of unknown origin, and through Kurono, they discover that it was made on Eden 3, Monzano's secret project that had continued during all these years. All this time, Monzano's real objective had been to acquire enough power to seize control over Babylonia, overthrowing Kurono and the current governor. But Lilith had never cared about any of this. It was a flawed vision belonging to a bygone era that had nothing to do with evolution. Her entire life had been a constant gamble. The thrill of risking even her own life to achieve better result is what had pushed her forward. Her ability to adapt and embrace change. And now, it was time for a final gamble. Lilith poisons all the citizens that have been transferred to Eden 3, starting from the entertainment district and eventually contaminating the entire underground facility, creating a massive hotspot for the punishing virus. When Discord and her team breach into Eden 3, Lilith kills her team and the 12 friends meet again. 5 to 10 years had passed since their last encounter, but now they find themselves on opposite sides. They had been raised and shaped as tools by both Kurono and Monzano. But if Discord had tried to escape from it and find a better life, Lilith had always used their pain as a means to empower herself. And even now, she was drawing power from something the people despised and dreaded. Discord's only objective was Monzano, but she is still a member of the Purifying Force, and Lilith is considered a defector. Knowing this, Lilith pushes Discord into taking action against her, gambling her own life. They both want to eliminate Monzano, and in the end, Discord decides to trust Lilith one last time. She takes the shot, destroying the filtering device of Lilith's frame, allowing her to fully open herself to the punishing virus. As she confronts Monzano, the level of punishing virus inside her body keeps rising, and eventually Lilith establishes a connection to the Ascension network, claiming her new power. After Monzano's death, Babylonia attempts to retrieve data samples from the facility, but Lilith uses her newfound powers to detonate a nearby nuke, killing everyone still in the area. Now also an Ascendant, Lilith uses the Ascension network to communicate with Vonnegut. He reveals that he still plans to support Kurono research at Fort Winter to study the Ascension network. After all, he believes that one of humanity's biggest flaws is in how we transmit information. Our genetic code cannot preserve knowledge, which instead needs to be recorded and transmitted through memory. However, with innovation, even insignificant information is preserved, and it can create ideals that will end up causing an eventual decline. Evolution begins with annihilation, and that's why he believes that the punishing virus is the best way to filter information, removing failed ideals and retaining only what is deemed successful. Lilith doesn't fully agree with his view, finding Vonnegut's reasoning rather stale. Her ambition is to fully master the Ascension network, and eventually Vonnegut himself will become an obstacle in her path. Years later, another Ascendant will pique Lilith's interest. An Ascendant that broke free from Babylonia, and that will later take a completely different path, cutting her own connection from the Ascension network. After Wither to Shine, we don't know if some of these events will be altered by the changes to the timeline, but I assume that almost everything in this chapter will not be affected. After all, Professor Trout is from our timeline, and he can still achieve a lot of what Vonnegut did up to this point, even if he doesn't end up merging with Nemo during the Outbreak. I assume that the main difference will be less interference with the Red Tide later on, slowing down its development, but we'll have to wait and see. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.